Warda, so happy you could join us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, tell me about Culturelink, where you work, and what sort of work you do in particular to help newcomers to the country.
So we're a settlement agency. That means that we work with newcomers. We do a whole bunch of different things. Some of our main programs is settlement at schools. So it's like we help families who are new to the country in terms of finding housing, finding daycare for kids, even registering for school, just everything that you need to find a life in Canada or find a life in Toronto specifically. We have youth programs, and then for me, I do employment. So again, it's like I work with newcomers, so they're brand new to the country. A lot of times when my clients are seeing me, it's like, okay, I've been here for a few weeks or I've been here for a few months and I already found an apartment or whatever, and now I'm ready to enter the labor market. So hi, Warda, please help me.
So I imagine that they're often very enthusiastic and excited when they come to you because they think, okay, I'm going to find a job really easily. But then the harsh reality hits them and they realize, you know, it's very difficult to find a job in Canada, a good job.
Our labor market, from what I'm understanding from people, works a bit differently than how other countries work, even like in Europe and in the States. We're a lot more... People find more challenges. That's what I'm hearing, right? And I do see the challenges that people face. So,
like what kind of challenges?
Just cracking in and finding a job. It just seems to be complicated. So a lot of times my newcomers, they can have a host of reasons of why they would be facing the challenges. The challenges could just be something as simple as language, which is like, okay, language is an issue. Go find, let's find you a school, you know, improve your English, and then we can try to find work. But sometimes I'll have clients who are very well educated, who speak very fluent English, and are still finding challenges. And that's pretty much the norm of my clients.
So what do you think the reason for that could be? Is it kind of like you know, I know people say, you know, you get a job based on merit. That's the idea, right? But then you know that, you know, people know each other and they recommend each other, and you know, there's a network in place. I don't know what you would call it, old boys club or something. There's something there where some people find it much easier because of the people that they know and the connections that they have to find a good job, whereas other people struggle.
Absolutely, 100%.
So you think
exactly
that's it?
Right, yeah. The stats is that about 60 to 80% of jobs are actually filled through your network, even when they're posted online, right? So some of the work that we do is getting clients to build their social network, which is like, you know, finding them mentors, getting them to go to job fairs, getting them to go to mentoring events and hosting mentoring events and things like that. So that's a lot of the work that I do. But unfortunately, that is one of the main struggles that my clients have. But it's not something that is only specific to my clients, right? So it's not something that's specific just to newcomers. Like, you know, first-generation Canadians usually have similar problems. They don't have the same level of network, but also it's a social economic thing. A lot of people from lower economic levels, regardless of their backgrounds, their racial backgrounds, will also have similar issues when they're trying to crack into or get into fields that are more, say, better paying, because they don't have those networks.
And then they might not look like, you know, the ideal that someone is imagining. Like if you think of a lawyer and you think of somebody like a white male, and then, you know, somebody comes and they're black or, you know, some other color, and they seem different. And then the employer might not actually think that they're being racist, but, you know, there is some sort of prejudice there, right?
Yeah, a lot of times, like say, for example, the example that you brought up, law, a lot of times people are groomed to be in those positions, right? They have family members who are either in those fields or no family friends who are in those fields, and they've been able to have those conversations as early on as, say, their teens, right? So it's like, okay, this is where you need to volunteer, this is the school that you need to go to, and yada, yada, yada. My clients don't have that.
What about Canadian experience? Because you often hear that, you know, this person doesn't have Canadian experience. What does that mean?
So fortunately, according to the Ontario Human Rights Commission, employers are not supposed to ask for those off the bat, right? Unless like for very specific jobs like engineering, say medicine and whatnot. But even with that, that is a part of the licensing process. And that's a challenge on its own. But say for example in IT, they're not supposed to ask for, oh, I'm not going to hire you because you don't have Canadian experience. But they will say for example, in the interview, you don't have the culture fit. That's another challenge that my clients have. And
So how would you help them with that? Like, you don't have the culture fit. How do you respond to that?
The way I look at it is, say for example, the world is built by squares, and we're all rectangles. So I'm trying to tell my rectangle clients, okay, this world is built by squares and you're supposed to fit into the square. You rectangle, be aware of that and try to fit yourself without losing too much of yourself into the square, right?
Yeah.
It's problematic. I don't like having those conversations. I really genuinely do not like having those conversations, but it is an important part. So it's like, this is how you shake your hand, this is how you shake your hand, or this is how you do small talk, or, certain cultural pieces, which is okay, but a lot of times is more than that. It's the components of who the person is that is a problematic thing. I'm not a policymaker, but policymakers, the thing that they address and they try to address when they do is trying to move away from trying to fit everybody into a square. Canada does a very good job in terms of their immigration getting the best of the best, right? We get very well educated people who have the tenacity to go through so many hurdles to finally make it to places like Toronto. And then it's like, okay, thank you for coming. Now we're going to put all these other hurdles for you to actually not assimilate, but like integrate into society and contribute.
Now, I hear all sorts of claims being made about newcomers, in the media, by, people. I've heard people say, on the one hand, that newcomers are a drain on our society because, they go on welfare or they need our services, right?
Yeah.
And on the other hand, I hear people say, well, newcomers are taking our jobs from us. So these are two very different things, right? But people are saying them sometimes in the same sentence, right? Yeah. So how would you respond to that?
It's very interesting because Canada is the second largest country in the world, and yet we don't have the population to
sustain ourselves.
Yeah,
right?
we don't. Like, compare us to our next door neighbors. We have about 10% of that population.
Yeah.
So we do need newcomers. We do need humans, right? And those humans coming in, they invigorate our economies. They create jobs. Not just as entrepreneurs, but just with their ideas, even when they're walking into our corporations or, or just different organizations. They create industries. That being said, the stats on the second flip of the coin, newcomers are a drain on they take welfare and whatnot. The stats don't support that. Newcomers, the stats do not show that significant amounts of newcomers are going on, say, things like welfare. It's actually the total opposite. They're coming in with savings, they're coming in with their culture, they're coming in creating economies. Yeah.
So Warda, how can individuals access the services of Culturelink or any other sort of services available to them?
So like you mentioned, I work at Culturelink. We are in the west part of Toronto. Just by Googling Culturelink, you'll be able to find our address. But if you are not close to us, there's a whole bunch of other organizations in the GTA and even in other parts of Canada. So I would recommend to people to look for settlement agency, and Google should show you where the closest settlement agency is.
And there are many around the city.
There are many, many, many. Thankfully.
Yeah.
One website to look into is settlement.org, which has a wealth of information that is specific for newcomers.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining me today, Warda. It was a really interesting conversation. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.